Hi everyone. In this video, we will see how to integrate ChatGPT API with the Streamlit chat. So, what exactly the Streamlit chat? So, Streamlit chat is like a Streamlit component or the chat or the UI component that Streamlit provides, which makes easy to have a chatbot like an interface in your Streamlit application. And this is how typically it looks. So you could see the conversation. This is what bot says on the left side, and this is what right side is what user had asked. So this is how typically it looks, and we're going to build. So let me show you what exactly we're going to build, right? So we could see we are calling it like an AI tutor, and you could see we have a choice of the model. We could use GPT 3.5 and the newly released GPT 4 also, because both of them have a similar syntax when it comes to making request and passing the data. So let's say what we can let me show you what I can ask. So let me say I say to bot that I am Pradeep and I want to learn AI, and then I click enter, and this is like let's say this message is we are going to send to ChatGPT, and then it is going to respond with the messages. Now here you could see this is what I ask, and this is what model replied, right? And you could see at the bottom I have also some kind of a debug information that what exactly the message array we are sending. So no need to worry. I'm going to explain you what exactly this whole thing is actually, just to show you, exactly what we are. So this is also a kind of a conversation, and then maybe I can ask something like, give me some AI use case for marketing, some kind of thing, and let me ask. And you could see that conversation both here in this UI interface also, and you could also see in the messages that we're going to send to ChatGPT. Now here you could see that what I ask is the marketing use cases, and then it is explaining those use cases here. So you could see the way the messages are arranged. So the latest messages are on the top, and then the previous messages are here. And again we could go and check the messages. These are some of our earlier messages. Then this is what we asked that I want to learn AI, then subsequently I ask marketing. So you could see this is how the interface is going to look like. And I might ask, let's see whether it remembers what I already told. And then I might ask, can you repeat my name? And yes, it remembers that I had said my name as Pradeep during the conversation. So this is pretty good actually. You could quickly build such a UI, do a good POC. And so I use very frequently this application for building chatbot for my clients on Upwork. And this is something you can hide it later. This is just for the debugging purpose, right, to see what it is there. So this is what exactly we are going to build. I'm also going to share the whole code with you so that you can simply run and try yourself. Only you need to keep put your chat gpt or let's say OpenAI key. So let's look into the code. Just let me tell you. So if you are not familiar with the ChatGPT API, then I had already covered one video that how to build a conversational AI chatbot using ChatGPT. So this was the video I made actually when the ChatGPT API was recently released actually. And so I quickly shown in this video how to use, where you could see I was showing in this Google Colab notebook. But this time I want to show it in a good, proper, Streamlit chat interface. That's the reason I'm, building this particular video. In the next video, I'm also going to show you how to create the same similar chatbot, but with your custom knowledge base or a custom data or custom documents. So you don't want ChatGPT to answer with whatever the knowledge or memory it has, right? You might want to ChatGPT should answer from your own documents, whatever the knowledge base you have. So those are some of the use case I regularly deal, as a freelancer. So that also one of the video I'm planning. Okay, so let's get into the code exactly and see what's and how these things are happening. So I have a VS code here. Actually, you could see I have run the Streamlit application here, and you could see what this is the requirement files. What we're going to need, first of all, we're going to need obviously Streamlit, and then we're going to require the Streamlit chat library, then OpenAI for chat GPT and API request. And this is like a Python dot environment so that I could read a environment file, because here is I have kept my OpenAI key. That's the only use of this particular thing. These are the something the functional requirement, let's say what we have. And this is the chatbot.py. This is the file what you see here actually. This is our chatbot or Streamlit application. What you see, this is the header of our or the title of our Streamlit, and then we have something here, and then we have a select. So let's look at and see what we have. First, we are importing the necessary thing, again Streamlit, and from Streamlit chart we are taking actually the message. So what exactly this message? So if you look at the Streamlit library here, and you could actually, so these are all nothing but the messages that you are rendering on the UI. So you can use the message function of the Streamlit chat, and then you can type the message, which is nothing but the text that you want to render, and then you have one flag: is user is equal to true or false. If user is equal to true, it's actually going to show at the right side, you could see here. And if this flag is not there, then it is going to, so this is how you see the conversation between the AI and the user. So that is the only function, let's say the message, that we're going to use, and that's what we imported here. And then I have some utilities that we will see with respect to, let's say, chat GPT or chatbot that we are building. And eventually, the this dot environment is what we saw the requirement just to read this particular environment variable. So I'm reading an environment variable called OpenAI API key, and this is where my OpenAI key is there, right? Again, this is our title, this is the subheader, and this is the select box that we saw on the UI, right? Which has a two options, GPT 3.5 and GPT 4, and whatever this option model that I'm going to use. This is the thing related to, let's say, session variable of the Streamlit, and what exactly they store. So whenever you interact with the chatbot, we want to make sure that we are maintaining whole this conversation into session variable, so that we can display them here also in a particular fashion. So we maintain two, let's say, in the session dictionary you have two lists: one to maintain all the messages that user has said, and then all the messages generated by the AI. So that's what that session variable is going to store. So you could see we have two keys in a session variable. One is the generated, especially for, let's say, the bot generated messages, and then the past key, which is for actually the user generated. Initially, if they are not there in the session variable, it means there is no conversation at this moment. So that's why we declare them as an empty. And this is the text input that we are taking from the user. This is what we take from the user whenever it asks, or whatever the user wants to ask. Now, another interesting thing is that we also want to maintain this, a messages for a chat GPT. So we know that the chat GPT has some syntax. We will go through it, like the kind of messages. So we will have one more key here where we're going to store, let's say, all the messages to the conversation for chat GPT. This thing we are actually using for UI. This we are actually going to send for the chat GPT kind of thing. And here, like I have interns, and I know many of them make a mistake here. So this particular thing, I will tell you at the end of the video what mistakes we do. If we don't use this thing, then we are actually going to lose the conversation while sending to ChatGPT. So I'm going to show you what mistakes usually you do, and you can avoid that mistake actually. So let's say this is going to store the variable. Now let's say what exactly the initial message. So initial messages is nothing but so we can, so chat GPT is nothing but it is going to have some messages or the conversation history. That's what it is going to have. And I already discussed this thing also detail here, that we can have this particular thing here, the history. So here also in the previous video I talk about. So in short, what exactly that initial messages are. So you could see that each entry in this list is actually a dictionary, and that dictionary holds information like the role, whether this message is from the bot or whether this message is from the user, or is it like a system message. So system message is something like setting some kind of an instruction or a character for the bot. So here you could see the role is a system, and the content is actually the message or instruction that we are saying. And then we are saying, you are like a helpful AI tutor, and who answers brief questions about the AI. That's like very simple kind of a prompt. Then we have some initial kind of a conversation where user says that, hey, I want to learn about AI, and then the assistant is the bot who is replying saying that that's awesome, what do you want to learn. So this is just like a static. Even I could simply delete these two things and it doesn't going to make any much difference. Even this one sentence is enough. So this is what our initial messages looks like. You can think of this as like an initial conversation, and the conversation is maintained in this particular fashion. So let's come back to our thing, right? So this whole thing is happening, without even we enter or write anything. So this whole thing is like a setup to make sure, we have proper UI, and we are having that whole conversation history. Now what happened exactly when the user enters something into the query? So the query is nothing but the input where we took from there, right? The moment, you know we got something inside that query, or whenever the user enters actually, then what happens, the first thing is we take all the messages till the point we have in our session state variable, because we're going to update that thing frequently. So we take those messages, and then what we do, we want to update our message array. So if our message has, let's say, these three things, and now user has said something, we want to append one more role here saying that, hey, user now asking something, right? So we want to update this particular message before we pass to chat gpt, and that's what it is happening here. So once we take the initial message, and then we also have a user query, and then we want to update the chat. Let's say what's happening in the update the chat. The update chat simply taking the existing messages what we have, then the role, whether that update message is we want to update for, let's say, a user, or wants to update for a bot, and the actual message. So if we are sending the, let's, from user, so we are simply appending, one dictionary to the existing records what we have. So we are saying that whatever the role and the whatever the message. So in our case, if the first time, if this is going to be the user, then it will be like, the role will be user, and the message could be, hey, I want to learn, let's say, NLP. So that could be the message. Now once we have the messages updated, now we can pass to, let's say, chat gpt. Maybe what I will do, I will print these intermediate messages so that, it will be easier for you to understand later. So then what happens, once we append the user message here, we will pass to a chat gpt. Now this is where we are actually making the request. Since now we have appended the user message, we're going to make request to the chat completion endpoint, and passing our messages and the whatever the model that we have selected, and eventually we will get the response from the model, and the response is really inside this message and content. Now once we got the response here from the model, we want to update our chat, because our chat holds all the information. It holds what user says and what assistant says. So whenever user had asked something, we appended. Now whatever the response we got from the bot, we should append that also here. So we will append. Now this time you could see, when we updated first time, we send role as a user. Now we are sending the role as assistant, so that we have a proper conversation maintained. And eventually, so this all things was related to chat gpt, this thing. Now we want to also update the session state, one for the user, which is the past, the other for the bot, which is the generated. If you could remember, we have declared them empty initially. Why we want this thing? Because we want to show those messages on the ui. Sorry, not this one. So we want to show these messages, right? So I told you, the one array we are maintaining from the user, and the one array we are maintaining for the bot. So this is the array we are actually updating. So we are updating session state past, which is for the user, which will take the query, and for the generated array we're going to append the response. Now we have everything. We sent the message, we got the response, we updated all the session variable. Now we can use that all information and show on the ui. So if you could see this thing, which is nothing but we are iterating through all the generated message, or the length of the generated message whatever we have. And you see this -1, actually we are iterating in the reverse order. That's what I explained you earlier, that if you could see, on the top we have the latest message and the latest response, and then we have the, maybe let's say prior to what we said. So that is the reason we are actually iterating in the reverse order. So you could see the range is starting from the length of the that particular array -1. So this is the like a last index, till we are going to the zeroth index. -1 means we are actually going to go up to the zeroth index, and -1, which is nothing but we are decrementing from, whatever the length, then length -1, length -2. That's what it is happening. And what we are doing while we iterating, we are using this message, which is nothing but we are displaying the message. So if you could again go and check the syntax of the library, we are simply putting the message, and when we put the message, we can indicate whether it is coming from the user or whether it is coming from the bot. And that's what happening here. You could see, since we know that our past array contains the, the user messages, and the generated array contains the responses from the bot, we are actually displaying. So first we are displaying the user message, and then we are displaying the bot message. And that is the reason when we display the user, we mention the user is equal to true. And this is how actually we are getting this good ui here, that, the conversation aspect of it. And eventually at the end, we just added one expander, so that we could see, what is exactly in this session state message, which is actually our chatbot, and this is how actually things are happening. And at the end you could see this message gets, first whatever we ask it is going to get updated, and maybe we could ask, what is computer vision, and it should, update that information also. So let me ask this, what is computer vision. So we got the response, right? And we should see it has also updated, let's say the this, right? Maybe what is computer vision, so you could see this updating well, right? So let's do one thing, right? Let's print the intermediate messages, maybe that will be the helpful for us. Now let's see, this is when we refresh, we only have our initial messages, right? So which is coming from this part, where we are actually getting the initial message. When there is a nothing already, we starts with the initial messages. What does the initial message says? Same thing that whatever we have declared in our utility function, this is what we have here. What else we can display in the middle? Let's see, whenever we got this message, let's say this is the intermediate step, right? This, we just update the chat. So this was actually before making any, let's say, st dot write, and this was before making the chatbot request. Maybe I would say, before making the API call. Okay, that's fine. Let's see what we see here. Now let me ask again those messages. I don't want to type because it is like a time consuming. So you could see before making the call what happened. So we had our initial message, and before making call we are appending actually the one we just asked, right? That's what it's happening here. So when we get the initial message, we update our initial message with the whatever the query user has said. And that is the reason you could see before we make the call to the API, we had already appended what user said, so that the next message will be whatever the response that we're going to get from the assistant. And that is the reason, right? Let's try and ask the again the next question, and we will see what we were getting. Again, you could see before making this particular call, we should see our message getting appended. So this was our initial messages. Then we ask, I want to learn about the AI. You could see, then before even making the call or earlier conversation, you could see, and this is what the recent message that we have put. So every time user says something, we will update the message before making the call. And then once we make the call, once we got the response, then we will also again update the chat to make sure the next time that conversation history gets up. So pretty easy. You can play around it, right? You can play around it and see how it works actually. The one more thing I told you, right? The mistake we do, right? So what we do sometimes, we don't use actually this. So the use the messages we are sending to the chat GPT. If you don't put it in a session variable, what will happen? We will lose the conversation. So let me, comment this particular thing. And here, okay, before even that, I just wanted to show you that it even work with the GPT-4, right? So let's go back, and maybe we will run with the GPT-4. I haven't run actually while testing, but I hope it works because I have both the access. I have GPT-4 access also. So let's see whether it works well with the GPT-4 also. It's taking time. Oh, it's still generating answer. Not sure why it should take this much time. Maybe should I refresh and try again? Or we got some error. As I told you, I haven't tested it, passing GPT-4. Let's see. It should work because there is not much difference. There is nothing. It just a name change for the model. Should we make any changes to see what, model actually we are? So let's go to the utility, and whenever we call this thing, we want to print the model that we're going to use. Maybe I just want to print the model name for this autocomplete thing. Okay, it is working fine. Did we got the response? Yes, we got the response. And sure, it must be Chat GPT, not Chat, whatever. Yeah, even it is Chat GPT you can think of, but let's say it is GPT-4. Did we see the model? Yes, model is equal to GPT-4. Okay, from yesterday onwards, I could see the both, even Chat GPT API used to give the timeout error or whatever that rate limit error. Seems a lot of people do try on weekends. Okay, let it run. Meanwhile, we will make those changes what I was telling. Let me go here and actually, hide these messages. Extracting, right? Yeah, I was telling if you don't use actually session variable and what if you use directly. So let me comment this part and maybe here instead of taking from the session, what if we directly take from the function, which is actually giving us the initial messages, right? This is what the mistake people do. So we got the message here. Yeah, why not? Let's see. It will be easy to see the messages we got here, messages, and here again we don't have a session message now, so maybe better we have to put this message thing here. Okay, and see what happens. So we got the error, first error. Why we got the error? Because if there is nothing in the query, then the message won't be created. And since we are checking it outside, this will give error because there is no such a message at this point. So let's, take this inside this. If this condition satisfy, why? Because if there is something generated, it means definitely it has something. Because that is the time it will get initiated. So at least we will get rid of this error. So let's go back and run this thing. Okay, right now see what happens. If instead of using from session, if I simply use from this, right, and that's a common mistake everyone does. You see, before making the call, we updated that I am Pradeep and I want to learn, and that's looking pretty good. There seems to be no difference, but the difference you will observe, yeah, we are anyway printing this information, right? So let's see what is the difference. Now let me answer something else, and then I again make a call. And if you see before making call, you see this is our initial messages, and this was, but where is the first message that what we talked? We lost this message. So we said, I'm Pradeep, I want to learn AI, and you could see we lost that message. That message is no more there. And we will see why it is happening. So you could say this message is not a part of chat GPT messaging. Now, and you could verify it. Let's say I could ask, repeat my name, and it will not be able to tell because you don't have that message. That message got lost. And it says, of course, your name is user because it forgot. It don't have that information because you could say every time you have initial message and you only have the recent message that what we are talking and we lost the conversation, so there is no point we are using chat gpt now, right? So this mistake we do, and why this mistake is happening, because this is the way streamlit works. So every time you make any changes here, streamlit applications, this whole page runs, right? And so what happened, this whole page runs, every time this page runs, it actually initialize our messages to again the same three messages. That is the problem, right? Because every time you have something put in the query, your messaging array gets start from again those three messages and you lose all this information, right? So that is, so you don't want to use these three messages, right? You only want to use these three messages where there is a no history, there is no messages, right? And if you're going to every time call this thing, then you are actually losing all the information, whatever the previous thing, right? So that is the reason we want to make sure we want to use initial messages only at the start of the conversation and not the always. So here what we make sure that if there is no messages in the session state, then and then we want to, let's say, those get initial messages put into the session state, right? So that session state gets available across all the runs what we are doing with the Streamlit. And then eventually, rather than calling here, we should take from the session state, so that we make sure session state has all the updated thing, right? So that's how we will get. And maybe this, yeah, I guess we are using those same messages here, right? This is how things, and it should work now. We don't need to change whatever at the bottom, it should actually work. Let's see. So that is the reason, this is a typical mistake when I see the people who are working with me do this particular mistake. Now we could see we have whatever we said. Now let's see whether it remembers, because that we already checked, right? And now you could see it retain whatever we had said earlier, and then we have, right? So this is how you could integrate the chat gpt and the Streamlit chat. I know this video might have got longer, but yeah, we wanted to go through code properly, and also I wanted to show these typical mistakes people do, and they lose all this chat history before they make call to chat gpt. So I will be sharing this code in the description. There will be a link in the video description, and I hope you found this video useful. As I said, I am planning actually to make the next video where chat gpt can answer from our own documents or our own knowledge base, right? So it will be in a combination of chat gpt, Streamlit chat, semantic search, and maybe some kind of a vector db like a pinecone, right? So actually I'm planning to make that video. Let's see, I hope this video within a I make that video within a week. So I hope you found this video useful. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe. Thank you.